So I thought this would feel better. I was so sure I was going to feel awesome after I did this thing. And I do, don't get me wrong, one part of me is thrilled, delighted, joyful. And the other part was like, why didn't I feel better faster? And why do I still feel funny as we speak? So I had a really big week, right? In really good ways. So I resolved a long-standing issue with a good friend that was getting in the way of the relationship. It was such a bummer. It was something I was responsible for that I should have spoken to them about years ago, and we lost lots of time and closeness because I didn't back then. Of course, you can only see what you see when you see it. So when I finally saw it, I was good enough and brave enough to go, hey, I've got to come clean about something. But geez, I did it in a clunky way. They'll know who they are as they hear this. I'm really glad that we had a wonderful conversation, and I think our friendship is at a new level, or perhaps back to where it was before my mistake. So that was great. And I didn't have a lot of fallout over that one. I felt a bit silly that I'd sort of figured out the resolution a funny way, but we got there and it was happy and joyful and a relief, right? It was like, oh, good, this thing's getting in the way. And I've had a couple of those recently where I've sort of been brave, looked at where I can be responsible for something in a relationship, had a conversation, and it's allowed a new level of freedom and joy between us. So I both feel happy about that, and I do feel proud about it. It's taken some courage, and been worth it. Anyway, I had the big Kahuna version of that this week as well. And there was a person in my life, very important person, and I had a story running for a very long time that because of the way they felt about me that I had made up, it was impacting my life, impacting my confidence, impacting my ability to self-express. And I thought, I need to really resolve this. But I was very, very nervous too because I didn't know how they'd react to my response. And even though I was going to take responsibility for my part, I also wanted to ask them some things, ask them to change some things that didn't work for me, or explain some things that had hurt me in the past. So with the help from my coach, Lockie, who I've referred to a lot here, I wrote a letter to this person and I took responsibility for something I felt had really impacted our relationship. And I also told them about some things that hadn't worked for me, and I also asked them to change a couple of things that they said. Anyway, I don't know if you know that thing where you go to get your hair cut and it never looks better. Well, the relationship with this person had never looked better right before I went to send this letter. And probably because I knew I was going to send it and I was already in that frame of mind. Landmark used to say, you set something in the future and you start living into it, right? And I think that is what happened. Anyway, I didn't want to send it because I was like, no, everything's all right. I don't want to mess with this boat. Anyway, I'm brave and I had my direction from my coach. So I sent it. And when I first sent it, I had what I think would be described as an existential crisis. And I said to Andy, I think I'm going to stop existing if this person doesn't like this letter. I'm being confidential about who it is, but just imagine an important family member. Anyway, off it went. The first couple of days was very bad. I knew Australia Post has a whole different time schedule going, so even though it was an express post, I thought we're probably looking at 5 business days. So the first couple of days I was anxious and having my crisis, and then a couple of days later I started to calm down and started to feel like Lockyer was helping me with my self-love, my self-security. However they reacted, I could still love me. And then eventually the person got in touch with me and said, can we have a conversation? And I thought, it's about the letter. And by this stage I was pretty grounded and happy and thought whatever happens will happen. And we had this conversation. And initially they'd found the letter upsetting and confusing, which I was really sad to hear about. So they thought that maybe something was really wrong with me. I don't know if you've ever had this before, but I remember apologising to some work colleagues years ago about how I'd been at a training and how I'd been self-involved and selfish through my anxiety. And one of the people came back to me and said, are you dying? And she asked it seriously, because I get people don't often do this stuff, right, unless they're on their deathbed or probably post their deathbed. Anyway, so the person said, are you okay? Is everything all right? And I said, no, I'm good. I just, wanted to take responsibility and talk to you about this stuff. Anyway, I was also sad because it had upset them enough that they hadn't slept well the night before and things I didn't want, so that wasn't great. But we ended up having a very open and loving and beautiful conversation and resolved, for me, kind of everything. I got to hear the recognition I hadn't thought was there. We got to clear up misunderstandings. It was really beautiful. Like, even as I tell you this story, what happened next is even more surprising, because I've been so much in the other that, yeah, it was so awesome, that conversation. Like, it's going to totally change this relationship. It's a really beautiful thing, and I'm proud of myself that I did it. I had to be so brave and generous, right? I was really generous, but wonderful, right? So the reason I'm sharing this is partly, yeah, if you want to do something like that, wonderful, highly recommend, life changer. But the reason for this particular recording is because I was so surprised by what happened next. So I got off the phone delighted, right? Just happy, content, wonderful. Probably for the next 2 or 3 days, I have not felt worse about myself in a really long time. I just had, if you've followed me here, you know I've had issues around thinking I'm a failure or a loser or not doing enough, not successful enough. That's haunted me for as long as I can remember. And exactly when I thought that noise had quietened down, because the person I needed the reassurance from had given it to me, and my big Kahuna challenge, or my boss level in gaming, I thought I'm sorted. And I had the opposite experience of sorted. And what I saw and what Lockie helped me to see was, when you have an identity that's protecting you for a long time, like I shared in my All Parts Are Welcome episode, it gets very upset when there's a position that looks like it's going to be under threat, right? So if I resolve this issue with this person, and therefore I don't need so many of my ego structures, my identity structures in this relationship was, I don't need you and I'm better than you. That's what I had running. Not very pretty, but I realised it was true. If I get rid of that self-protective structure, 2 things happen. One, the vulnerability underneath it is much more clear, but also that part of me is screaming, do not do that. Like, it's trying to trick me into not letting it go by making me feel bad, because it's like, if you let me go, 1, I'm going to die, the ego structure, and it doesn't want to die. 2, I've looked after you forever. I don't feel very appreciated. But yeah, it was so bad. So it ties into kind of the final thing that I want to say, but it's probably the biggest thing for anyone who is in any kind of transition, or trying to be brave, or trying to get rid of the structures that have protected them but minimised them in their relationships. And the thing is that when you're in a period of transition, a bit of a cliched term maybe, but it really is a transition, and I've been in one for a long time, trying to transition from a desperate need for success, recognition, getting my worth externally, to self-love, peace, enjoyment of life, freedom. That is both a thing that takes time, and I suppose different time for different people, but it also is incredibly uncomfortable. For anyone who's also doing it with me as you watch this, like, testify, right? Like, it is no joke, and I think it's pretty rare, and I might be wrong, I might just be sort of pumping myself up by saying that, but I think it's pretty rare to go, hang on, what am I living from? What's driving me? Do I have choice in my own life, or am I just pushed around by my insecurity? And to make the transition out of that has been very winding and very difficult and very painful and very joyful. That's the thing. Because I've been in it this week, I'm probably not being loud enough about the joy, but the joy is so worth it, but the practice is really tricky. So I've got one thing that I want to share with you by Chris Lapping. Chris Lapping, I think, is an American, and he's on LinkedIn and shares really useful stuff. So useful that I messaged him and said, listen, Chris, you can do these posts instead of me, right? He's got about 35,000 followers. So this is the thing I wanted to read you, because it's a good summary of what I'm talking about. The TED Talk version of failure always ends the same way. You hit rock bottom, you find your purpose, you build something remarkable, the audience cries, cut to black. That's what it was meant to happen. I was meant to be doing the TED Talk. I was meant to be doing the 10-minute version of this long-running drama I've been a part of, right? What he says and what I believe. Nobody talks about the failures that didn't become a story, the ones that just ended, the project that died, the venture that ran out of runway, the career pivot that took 3 years longer than you told anyone. Why am I telling everyone? I feel like this is what I'm meant to do, but it's not making it easier, right? Those aren't failures waiting for their next act. They're the actual education. And the people who learnt from them didn't bounce back. They came back different. This is the path, right? I want to be different, but different as in me, not different from me, real me, without the layers and layers. That's not a consolation prize. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. Thanks, Chris. If you're with me, stay strong. And if you get something inspirational out of this around what's possible, know that you have to allow yourself space and discomfort for the transition. Love you. Thanks for being here. So after I recorded that video, I watched it, of course, to edit it. And because I learned things so quickly, I realised it wasn't actually current anymore. And Dan couldn't upload it for me because it wasn't the whole story. So what you've just heard about, of course, is a great action I took, really happy with it, felt proud of myself. It's had a wonderful impact on that relationship. Win, 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 right? And if you want to know more about how to do that, please let me know in the comments. I then shared on the video you've just watched, of course, where I had curly hair, still me. It's just been a straightener involved this time. I shared about the terrible way my ego attacked me, and I've learnt more about that from help with Lockie and looking at it from a few different angles. It just really felt that if I was going to be more vulnerable with this person, give up the story I was running to make myself feel better, it would die. And egos don't like dying, and parts of us don't like dying, and they want to be felt that we're grateful for them and their hard work. So once I got to see that, I understood why it came in so strongly. But it was really, really painful. And of course, I'm sharing it because if you do something wonderful and then feel surprisingly shit afterwards, it can be useful to know. When I've shared it with friends, what happened and then how I felt, that's been their most common reaction. Like, what the hell? You did this great thing and then you felt terrible? So it's good to know about the ego's sneakiness. The other thing I wanted to share is because I did that video right on the coming out edge of that ego reaction, and it actually helped me to come out of the ego reaction recording the video, because of course I coach myself as I tell these stories. It was very good after that and then very middling. So I had the great experience of doing it. Then I had the terrible ego reaction. Then I recorded what you've just seen with my curly hair, or heard, where you won't be noticing my hair. And then I had this terrible reaction, and then I came out of that terrible reaction, had 3 or 4 days of joy and bliss and time spent with the person and just feeling like, wow, man, I'm so glad I did that thing, right? And then I became me again, bringing in the wonder of that decision and what that meant, and happy with it and proud of myself, and knowing that it will have an ongoingly good relationship impact in this very important relationship. And that still makes me feel happy. Even when I think of it now, I go, good job, man, like that was awesome. And good job to the person as well for how they worked with me and talked to me and were able to take on what I was saying. Lovely, 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 right? But the final piece of the puzzle that I wanted to share with you is after the terrible and then the great, then I was just me again, and me again is a penduluming, moody, happy, anxious, insecure, secure, joyful, fearful, right? Human. And that was a bit disappointing because I like to think if I deal with something big, I'll be happy forevermore. I can have a bit of a binary way of thinking about emotions and experiences. I've said on here before, like, what the hell do I think is going to happen? I sort something out and then I'm godlike, or I sort something out and then I'm just this peace machine for the rest of my life. If you're like me, try and give that one up, man, because it's lovely to have a break after a big thing. But if you're someone that's always like, okay, what else can I do? I don't know that there's going to be a moment of, I'm done, Actually connected to that, and I didn't even mean to talk about it, for those of us that are always trying to improve, there can also be a bit of a trap in that, right? Like I've talked about here, you're okay as you are. I'm okay as I am. Stephen Bodian said to me, you don't have to be a saint to be aware owning our humanity. That's how we get to self-love, going, I'm X, Y, and Z, good and bad in however you define those terms, and I'm still worthy and I still love me, and I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be saint-like. If anyone watching or listening was brought up Catholic, we've kind of got a little bit of that on our shoulders, right? Speaking of stuff on our shoulders, there was a fantastic couple of poems and a couple of memes that I saw connected to this, and I'll share them in the links if you'd like to have a look. One by Becky Hemsley, one by J. Mike Fields. So, great time, terrible time, great time, middling time, back to normal life. What's the point? I would say taking the action was 1,000% worth it. Let me know if you'd like help with taking the same kind of thing. Understanding the ego made me understand the pain and let it go quicker and have some compassion for it. Coming back to the middle was disappointing, and very good to see that actually no matter what I get externally, it's always going to come back to me and what I can create, right? And the self-love I can create and the peace I can create for myself. And overall, just knowing that it was worth it and life is still life and I'm still me. So that's a bit of an update. Thank you very much. And here's to what's next. Do yourself a favour.